Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
A couple questions to the proponent, if I may, through you, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Through you, Mr. Speaker, to the good proponent, could the good proponent please advise as to what aspect of the criteria is being changed from the amendment? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative D'Agostino.
Through you, Mr. Speaker. So in the amendment, in particularly line 9, with respect to replanting, we have now replanting with native species whenever practicable. That is an amendment that we felt makes sense. And again, it's whenever practical, so it's not a requirement, but it would enable DOT, when they're doing the replanting, to avoid, frankly, what happens now is when you just leave the area completely, untended, you have invasive species that come in and grow out of control and then require more work to get rid of. So planting native species whenever practicable, and obviously there's to the extent that the cost allows, is the main change in the amendment. And then there's an effective from passage in section 2, I think it's line 39, DOT had just requested that their reporting date be on August 1st of each year to the committees of cognizance with respect to the amounts that they spend. So that was a request that DOT requested, and those were the two main changes between the amendment and the original bill. Through you,
Representative Harding.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and through you to the good proponent. Since it is a strike call, I'll ask you just further questions on the bill if it's okay with you, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Through you, it's my understanding that DOT already does have guidelines, and I think they testified to that. Is this, in your opinion, somewhat reflective of what DOT already conducts and more or less codifies the current guidelines? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative D'Agostino.
Through you, I guess I would say probably about 75% of the way there. This does add some additional, bolts on some additional pieces to what they currently do. For example, currently I don't believe they consult an arborist when they do a lot of the work, and so that's a requirement in here now. And again, it doesn't require the hiring of an arborist, it's just the consulting of ones that are on staff either with DOT or DEP. Some of the requirements in here with respect to mowing and pesticide application are not in their current guidelines. This makes them more comport with the federal guidelines with respect to highway mowing and highway pesticide application. So there's a few additional add-ons to that. So I guess with this bill, we're taking it from, say, 75% to 100%. Through you.
Representative Harding.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And through you, just following up on that point, I know DOT did have some reservations initially. Could the good proponent tell the chamber the discussions that the good proponent has had with DOT and whether or not the reservations have been resolved in regards to, one, the fiscal cost, and two, the management perspective of being able to do this in a timely fashion? Through you,
Representative D'Agostino.
Through you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah. So, a couple of their concerns. Obviously, they did not want to be hampered at all because they need to be able to clear roads, particularly in emergencies. And you'll see in here there's explicit language that does not in any way impede their ability to go out and clear in the case of emergencies, snowstorms, fallen trees, storms, etc. So that was very important to them. It's important to us too. We want them to be able to go out whenever possible to clear an emergency situation. So that's preserved. And we're also not reducing their budget here, which was obviously a concern as well. But we are asking for some more oversight with respect to it. I know most members I've spoken to, when I tell them that DOT spends upwards of $2 million on clear cutting a year, are a bit blown away by that number. And this just requires a reporting of those numbers to the committees of cognizance so we can have more of a look at it. And let's see what effect this has over time. And then if the committee, certainly the ranking members committee, working with the chair, want to take more of an aggressive look at the actual budgeting for this work, they can do that. But that does not happen here. We do not restrict their budget in this bill, and that was a concern of theirs as well. Through you.
Representative Harding.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the good proponent for his work on this. I also want to thank him for his comments and clarifications. I do support this initiative, both the amendment and the underlying bill. I think it, for the most part, does codify current guidelines, but makes some important steps in regards to oversight of the DOT vegetation management, which is important to keep the beauty in the environment that we have here in the state. But also at the same time, I do like the fact that the first thing they need to consider in the guidelines is the safety of the traveling public. So it also puts into consideration the importance of getting rid of some trees in the unfortunate instance it may be necessary to protect those walking and traveling and driving along the roads. So I do support this bill, I support the amendment, and I urge my colleagues to do the same. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.